The Tennessee Titans put the pads on for the first time today, and I'm going to tell you what I'm watching for. Wake up, Titans fans. It's time for the Sleeper Titans podcast. On today's show, I want to go through every single position and talk about what my expectations are as the pads come on for the Tennessee Titans. But overall, as a team, the intensity level is about to go through the roof. The reality is, when the trenches are on 75% speed, when you can't really hit people in the 7-on-7s and the 11-on-11s, and you know that nobody else is wearing pads and all of that, it just naturally takes the edge off of what football practice needs to be like. There's naturally going to be, I'm not protected by the pads. I know my teammate is. You can't be going 100% full go in those scenarios. So now with the pads on, all of the position battles, all of the intensity is about to ramp up to the highest level that it possibly can. And that goes for every single player. I know that we could sit here and say, oh, it's all about the trenches. It's all about the trenches. It is all about the trenches. But just because the trenches are the most impacted by the pads going on doesn't mean that they're the only people impacted by the pads going on. Cam Ward is number one on my list. Cam Ward is going to be affected by the pads coming on, and he has to adjust his game as well. Now, before I tell you why, I do want to thank you guys for tuning in. I'm going to be putting out content all year long here on the Sleeper Titans podcast. Make sure that you guys get subscribed, throw a thumbs up on that video, and throw a tighten up down in the comments. But Cam Ward's pocket navigation is about to get real. All right, it's different when you don't have the pads on because the offensive line, the defensive line, again, they can't go at 100%. Now, Cam Ward's not going to be taking hits. He better not be taking hits. If somebody hits Cam Ward, we could not only kick them off the team, I will stuff them in a rocket launcher and shoot them to the moon. Like, I really don't care. Do not touch Cam Ward. But they still are going to simulate blitzes, pass rushes. They're going to do games and stunts up front, and you can get to Cam Ward and touch him with a hand and have it be called a sack and all of that. The defensive line is going to go at a different speed and a different pace than they were going at before. The offensive line is going to have to ramp it up to 100%. They're not going to have that built-in excuse of, oh, well, I can't go 100% when I don't have my pads on. The offensive line is at a massive disadvantage without the pads on. So Cam's pocket navigation is going to have to quicken. He's going to have to move faster. All right, because the defensive line is going to be moving faster. The offensive line is going to be more actually vulnerable. Cam's going to have to quicken up the process, move his feet. The throw to Alec Iomanner on the second practice that the Titans had, where he jumps over top of Cordell Flott, gets the ball, runs for a touchdown. Great throw by Cam Ward. Sidearm looks sweet. But his feet weren't in a good spot. He was like flat-footed and threw it sidearm like that when really you want your body turned and you want your momentum going with your feet in a proper spot. Think about throwing a baseball. You don't want to throw a baseball like you're standing straight and you throw a baseball like that. You turn your body sideways and you throw. So Cam's footwork in muddy pockets is something that he's going to have to work on more, and it's going to be a more accurate representation of what it's actually going to be like when the bullets start flying now. So this is where all of that mechanical work, that footwork that he's been trying to improve, all the stuff mechanically that Cam Ward's been working on, now it'll actually be tested because it'll be much more of a realistic environment than it has been every single practice leading up to this point. Obviously, the run game, the running backs, the tight ends, the wide receivers, blocking, even the wide receivers on the outside and the hand fighting. Like, you could just get more physical with the pads on than you would otherwise. And with a physical cornerback like Alontae Taylor, Marcus Harris, who will get up in your face, or as Robert Saleh said, stick his face in the fan. I like that phrase. That was pretty fun. But the level of physicality on the outside is going to ratchet up, and that has me having my eye on Carnell Tate. Carnell Tate got a lot of space at Ohio State because of Jeremiah Smith, what they did with the offense, how they used him, and that space that Brian Dable can create for Carnell Tate. But it's not going to be consistent. Carnell Tate's going to have to learn to win against tight man coverage at the line of scrimmage with more than just his footwork. He's got good footwork at the line of scrimmage. He's a technically trained wide receiver coming out of Ohio State. He's smart with his releases. But the hand fighting, the physicality, even at the catch point, the physicality at the catch point. Carnell Tate could jump over top of everybody in college, right? He won all of those contested catches. Well, in the NFL, people are going to be more physical with you, not only at the line of scrimmage, throughout the life cycle of your route into the catch point. How does Carnell Tate, who is a thinner guy, who had some question about the level of physicality that he would play with, not a yards after catch guy who runs through tackles, not somebody who's real physical and things like that, how will he handle the true NFL physicality with pads on? That's what I am watching for. And Alec Iomanner has been dominating boys at training camp. What's he going to be like with the pads on? Is that going to continue? It should. It should in theory. It should. Now, the tight end group, the running backs, obviously, they're dealing with a level of physicality. I'm not really that worried about the running backs. They're used to it. It's whatever. We know who these guys are. But that offensive line, that's where we land, right? The offensive line. Totally different. Dan Moore going against John Franklin Myers, a physical rusher. Or Jermaine Johnson, who is more of an explosive, powerful rusher. Or Jacob Martin, who is more of a speed, slithery rusher. And then dealing with Femi and Keldrick Falk, who are power rushers. And the interior, dealing with Jeffrey Simmons and John Franklin Myers and Solomon Thomas and Jordan Elliott. Like, the offensive line has its work cut out for it. Now, there are some reports coming out of the first week of training camp that say that the offensive line has held their own. It hasn't been as bad as you expect. And that's good to hear. That's great. But again, this defensive line was going at 75%. And when you think about what the philosophy is of this scheme, especially on the D line, is to go forward and go fast 100% of the time. This defense is nowhere near normal if the D line is going 75%. So this offensive line, maybe they have done all right through the first week, but that was going against, 75% of the Titans' defensive effort might as well be zero with the way that they plan to play defense. And they've talked about it so much with hair on fire, 3 or 4 reps at a time, 60% of snaps, rotating in every 3 plays, blah, blah, blah. Like, that cannot be replicated whatsoever at 75% speed. It's just nowhere near what it's going to be like. So, no, this was a given anyway. But with that fact included, nobody is going to be more stressed by the pads coming on than the offensive line. And again, that's no shocker. That's the expectation. Sure. But regardless, it's going to be quite the test. Is Dan Moore going to be the security blanket that Robert Saleh tried to call him? Not much security, in my opinion. Will J.C. Latham, now healthy from the pec strain, from the hip last year, will J.C. Latham come out and dominate? Because he should. Outside of Jermaine Johnson, and let's call it what it is, Jermaine Johnson isn't some great pass rusher. The most sacks he ever had in a season is 7.5. He had 3.5 last year, 2.5 his rookie year. Jermaine Johnson is not some elite pass rusher who should give the Titans problems. We have said about Dan Moore that Dan Moore is good against average rushers and bad against good rushers. Jermaine Johnson is an average rusher. Dan Moore should win that matchup more than he loses. Jermaine Johnson, to his credit, confident, says he thinks he's a top 10, 15 player at edge in the NFL. Well, he's never been close to that. So he can think that, I think that I'm a millionaire. Well, I'm going to wake up tomorrow, and that don't mean that it's true. I hope that Jermaine Johnson pays that off. But there is nothing whatsoever at this point to suggest he's anywhere near that. Which means that Dan Moore should win that matchup. Dan Moore is paid more money than Jermaine Johnson. Dan Moore should beat Jermaine Johnson more than Jermaine Johnson beats him. And who else? Femi, rookie Falk. Again, Jacob Martin, a 30-year-old journeyman who had his career high in sacks last year with 5.5. Talking about a 5.5 sack guy. J.C. Latham and Dan Moore should dominate. They should dominate that matchup. Now, the interior, Pete can do whatever he wants, but Schlotman, Volson, Slater, Carmona, Coogan at backup center, those boys are going to get whooped, I bet. But the tackles should dominate. Not just win, they should dominate. So, big eyes on the offensive line. Obviously, the D-line. What if the edge rushers dominate? What if Jermaine Johnson does become that level of player? What if Femi takes a huge step forward from a technique standpoint and starts putting it on these boys? I got to be honest with you. If the edge rushers dominate the tackles, that will give me more concern about the O-line than I'll be excited about the edge rushers. Sorry. I will view that negatively. Now, if the tackles handle their business, I'll feel better. But on the defensive side, the interior defensive line should absolutely dominate. If Jeffery Simmons, Solomon Thomas, John Franklin Myers, Keldrick Falk when he rushes from the interior, if they can't dominate Schlotman, Volson, and it's going to be hard on Pete with those guys next to him, but if they can't consistently win that matchup, I would also view that negatively. Now, that would be great news for the interior offensive line, but the Titans' defensive line, especially the interior, is what this team is literally going to be built on. And if John Franklin Myers and Jeffery Simmons can't dominate Austin Schlotman and Cordell Volson or Jackson Slater every single day, then they can't be the dominant force that takes this team to a winning record or something. You know what I mean? People who are as optimistic about the Titans think that they could win 10 games, make the playoffs. I think you're nuts. I don't see that. But if that happens, it's going to be because the Titans' interior defensive line was absolutely incredible. That's why that happens. So we'll see there. The linebackers. I'll be honest with you. Cedric Gray is great in run defense. I think Anthony Hill will be great in run defense. We know that Cody Barton isn't good in run defense. I need Cedric Gray to be good in pass. I need Anthony Hill to get better in the pass. Like, I'm not really that interested in the linebackers, even with the pads coming on, because I know what they can do in the run game, and it's the passing game that I'm more worried about. And the fact that the Titans' young linebackers like James Williams, Anthony Hill, Cedric Gray have been making plays in practice and pass coverage, that gets me more excited than being like, oh, Cedric Gray was great in run defense today. Well, duh, he already was. You know what I mean? Like, that shouldn't be a shock to anybody. In the secondary, I want to see Kevin Winston hit some people. He's been trying, you know what I mean? And I want to see Alontae Taylor be super physical with these receivers. That's what the Titans, that bump and run zone coverage on the outside, not Cordell Flott, who's more of a field corner, but Marcus Harris, Kevin Winston, Alontae Taylor. They need to set the physical tone in the secondary. So let's see if they do that. And then finally, we got to mention it. Special teams. Now is the time. All of these depth players that we talk about, the safeties, the depth corners, like Joshua Williams, for example, all these guys, these Nasri Johnson, and the Titans have added a couple of camp body corners as of late, some veteran guys. The linebacker battle, James Williams, Muhammad Diabate, Jalen Harrell, Truman Jones, Jaron Kanik at tight end, Kylan Granson, even Bryce Oliver, KJ Osborne, Xavier Restrepo. Are you going to make any kind of impact on special teams at all? He's their emergency kicker right now. He nailed a 30-yard field goal, but Kal-El Mullings. Are you going to make an impact on special teams? Right now, when the pads come on, you got to show the coaches that you are willing to be overly physical on special teams. That's how they know, oh, this dude loves to hit. He's going to make it. You got to prove your physicality on special teams. And Robert Saleh even said last week, anybody who's on the roster bubble, any depth guy, you better live in Bones Fossil's office. It's going to be all about special teams. So each individual spot, that's what I'm looking for. Quarterback, pocket navigation. Wide receivers, physicality with press and at the catch point. Tight ends, run blocking, pass blocking. Offensive line, self-explanatory. Defensive line, self-explanatory. Linebacker, whatever. I know what they can do there. Cornerbacks, physicality at the line of scrimmage, dropping back into your zone. Safeties, hitting over the middle, disruption. Special teams, being a physical beast, enjoying the contact. It's here, folks. Football just got real today. And I'm going to be here to break it all down all year long on the Sleeper Titans podcast. I am your host, Tyler Rowland. Get subscribed. Stay subscribed. Thumbs up on the video. We're growing the channel over here. Some additional content. Nothing's happening with my other content outlets. I'm still doing all that. We're just doing a little bit more here. So make sure that you enjoy. We're getting real close to 500 subscribers, 1,000 before you know it. Be a part of the wave. Invest early in the Titans Sleeper podcast. But that's going to do it. Again, I'm your host, Tyler Rowland. As I tell you every episode, tighten up.